scan cleanup, we want to start importing OBJs, at least the old school way of doing it. I still think it's a good idea, is to start with some kind of primitive. I don't care which one. A gear, for example, is fine, or Polymesh star, believe it or not, is the software default OBJ, and it sounds weird, but it is, for importing other OBJs. So like if you delete something, here's a weird, like if I delete this gear, see what happens. Let me delete it. Delete. Oh, it won't work. Oh well. Point is, if you delete enough subtools out of something, it used to be that the star is all that was left behind. I'm really kind of going to be insistent about this and just be like, yes, make the star. Aha, I told you. Haha. Anyway, yeah, so really useless knowledge there, of course. But the point is you can import an OBJ into any primitive. I know, silly, right? But OBJ preferably, oh, looks like FBX2. Look at that, that's nice. So either an OBJ, cool. I didn't know that you could just import FBX directly through the import button. I just learned something, that's nice. So, I know this is funky. Pay no attention to the bad modeling. The point is you can import anything into a primitive. You can even import stuff into your current subtool, whatever that happens to be, by the way. But let's just keep it simple. So from here, I'll import my scan data, which you guys should have already exported as OBJ. Oh, I hope I don't actually have to go over this with you, but and when I say that, I don't mean to be, I guess what I'm saying is hopefully you've already gone to File, Export in Agisoft. I don't know if you want me to do that for you, but I can totally do that for you if you feel like that's something that's that you want me to go over. I feel like it should be obvious that you should have a OBJ exported from your scanning software. But maybe I'm jumping the gun. Maybe we should first go over exporting. I don't know. It's just literally out of Agisoft, File, Export, OBJ. You need an OBJ, right? Once you get the OBJ out of Agisoft, then click Tool Import. Again, you can have anything on the screen. I repeat, but it's usually like the star that Zbrush will import the OBJ into by default. Sorry, I know I'm rambling here, but there's my OBJ. I usually name the OBJs by like what alignment I'm using, knowing that high might be a little higher than I need or want. It might create more holes than I need or want. Medium tends to be the sweet spot, but this is kind of good because if we have holes, that's part of the scan cleanup process. That's kind of what I want to talk about. So yeah, this is my high alignment and high mesh. Again, the point count is 1.4 million. You can see that the hair is super freaking noisy. I think this was covered in the previous video, but I'm going to go over a lot of it again and hopefully some new stuff as well. So I don't want to go over too much that was in the other video, but it is a workflow. It's really important. This is where you guys should be. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about the workflow. And I mean, if you want to go back and watch the first video, like I said, it should be a lot of the same material. But here we go. And there's a little bit of this in the Jeffrey Ian Wilson video that I pointed you to. Mostly, I would say this is covered in the 1024 scan workflow YouTube time lapse, which goes over all of this really fast. Like probably, I don't know, 10 or 20 hours worth of work in a matter of minutes. But let's do it the slow way right now. So I've duplicated my scan data. If you're like one of those people that has to see color and you're like, no, I'm not going to be happy until I see the color on my mesh, you can certainly do that by going to Texture Import. You should have also exported your texture. It should export with your OBJ when you export it out of Agisoft. I'm not sure about Meshroom. I'm sorry. I just don't use Meshroom enough to know. I've exported the JPEG as a 4K file. You could also export a TIFF or even an EXR for best results. But as long as you can see it in ZBrush, ZBrush is sometimes picky about JPEGs, but it appears to be coming in. Pay no attention to the completely nonsensical color data right now. All you've got to worry about is flipping it vertical, because for some reason ZBrush loves to flip everything upon import or export. Don't ask. I don't know why. It's just the way it is. I didn't make the software. It's a feature, not a bug. Whatever. You got to flip it. All right, that's just all you need to know. Now, next, go to texture map, and as long as you flipped it, you can now select the same thing, and there it is. And now we've got some nice color. Looks nice. I personally find this distracting for scan cleanup. I'm just showing this to you because I feel like it's important for you to understand how to apply the scan data texture onto the scan data. Obviously the texture button on and off. And if you really want to see this without any kind of lighting, well, first of all, basic material allows you to move the light across your model. That's why I use the basic, one of the reasons why I use basic white material. But let's just say if we go back to the flat color, then there's your color data without any lighting or shading, right? So, and if we turn the texture off, it's just going to be blinding white. All right, point is, work with basic material on, make sure the light's somewhere on the front of your model, turn the texture off. And now we can start with scan cleanup. Here we go. Oh, actually, before we duplicate this, sorry, jumping ahead a little bit. Don't duplicate just yet. There's a small problem that you're going to have these floating bits of geometry, and it's really hard to tell how many you have. They're really a pain in the butt. There are a few ways to get rid of them, but this is where you should be taking notes, because really this is the fastest and easiest way I've ever found to get rid of all these floaty bits. Do not try to delete them one by one. It will take forever. Do not try to mask them and poly split them and oh god, no. See, I've done all that. I'm telling you, the best way to do it is to only have the one scanned object selected, go to split and say split to similar parts. This is going to take all of the smallish parts and hopefully keep them together as one subtool. But since there's so many fragments floating out here, it's going to make a ton of subtools. I mean, we're talking 150, 100, 200, I don't know. It could take a while, and you might be at this point saying, WTF. No, you're probably not saying that because you don't speak in acronyms. Or maybe you do. You can avoid this, or a lot of this, by deleting the fragments in Agisoft first. So use your lasso selection in Agisoft and delete it there. If you're an idiot like I am and didn't do that, then this is what you have to do, right? You say split to similar parts, and now I have all these subtools, and I mean a lot of subtools. How many subtools? Oh, just 101, 129 subtools. So quite a few. So what do? I make sure that only my head is selected, so this is important. Don't select any of these fragments, obviously. Only have the head selected, and then you can click Delete Other, and oh my god, they all go away. Now we have gotten rid of all of those fragments all at once, and it was super fast and super easy, as opposed to doing it any other way, which takes me forever. Give me color or give me death. Yes, I like to see the color still on here. And look, even with the fragments deleted, the texture should still work. Yep, so we're good, even after deleting the fragments. If we break these UVs, you can't break UVs by deleting faces, by the way, or deleting fragments. So that's not going to be the way that you break this, thankfully. But it can get broken. It will get broken if you Dynamesh it, which is what I'm about to do. So, fair warning, don't Dynamesh this guy. Duplicate for insurance purposes. Always keep, in fact, if you want to rename the bottom layer, scan data, just so we know, this is our pure data. We want to keep this intact. Don't touch it. It's good the way it is. I mean, delete the fragments, but don't do anything else. Just leave it the way it is. Now this guy we're gonna solve some problems with by converting it to a Dynamesh, and by converting it to a Dynamesh, we're gonna close all the holes that you can see in the back of the head. If I zoom in, we can kind of see what's gonna happen topologically. Turn on your wireframe just for funsies and get really close to your scan data. And this actually looks very much like Sculptris Pro data, because both scan data and Sculptris Pro deal in triangles, not quads. So you can really see all the triangles here in the eye and cheek area. But we're going to Dynamesh this, and we want to Dynamesh this so that we keep this data. And I know it's noisy, but don't worry about that for now. So we want to Dynamesh this at a level which is not too high and not too low. It's arbitrary. But, so here we are under Geometry, Dynamesh. But again, not too high, not too low. So what the heck does that mean? If I switch to 128, or let's say 256 even, let's try it, and click Dynamesh, watch how the wireframe changes. And this is going to sort of give you an idea of what I mean. So if I hide the other subtool, that's probably too low, because we are like solving the problem of the holes, but oh my god, look what it did. It tried to solve the problem by, wow, like drawing these crazy, almost triangular looking shapes. All the holes are closed, and it's pretty easy to smooth at this point, but I've also lost a lot of the detail. So I usually do this at 1K to try to get some of the detail back. But ultimately, you're going to also Z-remesh this. We're using Dynamesh to close the holes, and then we're using Z-remesher to give us better topology. So obviously, 500, 100 to 500 to 800 is maybe a little too low. Like I like to do 1024, 1K. And then we'll Dynamesh it. This should keep most of the detail from the scan data. And the triangles are mostly going to turn into quads, weirdly. It's still not the best topology because, of course, we want to use Z-remesher to create much better topology. Here we go. So at 1024, that looks pretty similar to the scan data. If I zoom in, I actually have quads, believe it or not. Mostly quads, not all quads. And this is pretty sculptable. You could even, like if I went to the damn standard brush, BDS, and even if I were to turn on Sculptris Pro with a damn standard brush, like we can do this. And it works. We can make a small brush. And you can see how Sculptris Pro, again, makes triangles, but like allows us to just draw this line because Dynamesh doesn't have any subdivision levels and it's mostly quads. So that's pretty cool. If we look around to the back, yeah, I'm still seeing that funky weird triangle stuff back here, but the holes are closed. I mean, we can see at the bottom too, holes closed. All right, now then, and if your computer can't handle this, by the way, then it's not like you can't go to a lower level. So if you've got to do the 512, for example, you can. And the way you do this to reactivate it, say we wanted to go lower, maybe your computer isn't quite like good enough. So touch the mesh. That sounds weird, but sculpt on the mesh a little bit. It doesn't have to be a lot. All you got to do is just click on it, basically, to reactivate Dynamesh. It hasn't changed the topology yet. It hasn't really been remeshed. But you got to touch the mesh and then command drag off the mesh, release, and you're going to see that now we're going to go down to 512. Hopefully you saw that change. So if you have a slower computer and you can't handle 1024 Dynamesh, 512 is probably okay, actually. Turn off Dynamesh, and you're probably wondering, well, what the heck are you talking about? Which one is it? 512, 1024? I mean, I don't know. I don't know how fast your computer is or how long you're willing to wait. And you're going to capture all this detail back anyway from the original scanned object. So don't worry if you need to go a little bit low on the Dynamesh. As long as you get most of the features hell, you could probably go as low as 400 or 500 for Dynamesh if your computer needs to go that low. It's fine. Turn Dynamesh off now at this point. If you are at a low enough sort of resolution, you could actually start sculpting some of this bad stuff out. If it really bothers you, like, it's okay to use even Sculptress at this point. Sculptress Pro mode, you know, I've got the S button on. Maybe you're at clay buildup, and you have the S button on, excuse me. So in obviously a large brush does a lot of destruction here. If you really want to start cleaning this stuff up from the back, which you know you're going to have to deal with this at some point anyway. And you can see the insane amount of destruction that a large Sculptress Pro brush is just capable of doing, like a lot of crazy destruction, as you can see. Pretty crazy. The super erase button, just make a huge brush, turn on Sculptress Pro, and melt. Now here you're starting to see a problem, which is that I've got like holes that are being created, and this is a big issue, right? We don't want that. So be aware that you can create holes in your mesh. Dynamesh, believe it or not, can also create holes. But also keep in mind that Dynamesh will close holes when you reactivate it. If you turn the button back on, you can actually see that the holes were just immediately closed. So see, there were holes right here. You saw that, right? And I can even make it larger. Big, massive hole. Really obnoxious. You don't want that. That's going to really give you a bad time, right? So if you start to get holes in your mesh, you might freak out a little bit. I mean, it's definitely a problem oftentimes to create holes like this. It's not good, right? But Dynamesh, note the resolution is 512, turn it on, it immediately closes those holes. So don't panic, not a big deal. I still have a lot of the major features intact, but you can see here I'm starting to sort of fix the parts I want to fix or get rid of. Maybe I just want to get rid of the hair completely. Maybe I want the shape of his head, the skull. Hopefully you had a skull cap. Hopefully you did your homework. Hopefully you did the right thing and had your friend or family member wear some kind of tight-fitting skull cap or bandana. Because this is crazy town. This is craziness. This is, what am I doing here? This is a lot of work. I don't really want to do this. But because I didn't make him wear that, I'm kind of forced to sort of melt away these huge chunks of dreadlocks with the Sculptress Pro brush. And it's interesting to note that I can do this very easily again with a huge Sculptress Pro brush. Again, the smaller the brush, the smaller the triangles that are being created. But what I really want to make sure you're doing more than anything else, right, is, whoa, you can really see it there. Like you can see, zoom in. You can totally see how it just melts away the topology. What I'm mostly concerned about at this point is getting all your holes out. Note that there's no holes at the bottom here and no holes anywhere. And I mean, the hair is something I'm going to add later anyway, so this is probably all going to go away anyway. Okay, what do we do next? Well, next, if we have no more holes, like I said, you could do a lot of sculpting here if you wanted to in this sort of Dynamesh mode. And before we had Sculptress Pro, we had Dynamesh. Remember, if I hit Control Drag, that's going to reactivate Dynamesh, and you can actually see how the topology changes. It's pretty cool. So Sculptress Pro mode is going to make topology based on the size of the brush. There are no subdivisions here, guys. I repeat, no subdivisions. Don't even think about subdivisions at all, because Dynamesh doesn't really play with subdivisions. So you're not hitting Command D or Shift D or whatever. Don't mess with subdivisions. What I want you to notice is I can like just melt away my topology with a large brush and kind of erase it. And again, the larger the brush, the more effective it is in doing this. But the minute that I command drag off my model, as long as I have this button on, watch the topology change. That's Dynamesh doing its thing. Now it's been Dynameshed again. Okay, so like I said, if you wanted to do some work right now, using a combination of Dynamesh, as long as you didn't obliterate the large facial features and you were just concentrating on secondary forms, like, I don't know, erasing out this crazy hair, for example. Like, I really, at this point, kind of just want the shape of his skull. And I really wish that I had, well, he's got so much hair. This guy's got dreadlocks for days. So it's sort of hard to get a bandana on somebody like this. So I'm faced with this problem of getting his skull and the shape of his skull when I don't really have the ability to do that very easily because he wasn't wearing, well, he just has a huge amount of hair, let's be honest. So what the heck am I supposed to do now? Well, and again, when you activate Dynamesh, you can see the topology change. So once you're at this point, you'd like to be able to erase stuff faster. You'd like to be able to, yes, you have Sculptris Pro mode. Yes, absolutely, you can use Sculptris Pro mode to, you know, make sure this S is on and make a large brush, S for brush size, hold down Shift. And yeah, that's definitely a way that we can clean up, but it's also pretty destructive, as you might notice. It's fairly destructive. So what's a way that we can maybe clean up our scan data that doesn't quite obliterate the topology according to brush size? Is there any other way to do this? Well, there's an older way to do it that doesn't involve the Sculptris Pro mode or Sculptris at all. The older way to do it is to basically shift or smooth out lower subdivision levels. So we'd like to get our subdivision levels back. And in the previous video I went over this, so I want to go over this again. It's really useful. Turn Dynamesh off and turn Z-Remesher on to give us better topology. So click the Z-Remesher button. If you feel like you're a little nervous and you want to just sort of have a little insurance, you can always duplicate your subtool very easily. I always keep the original scan data intact at the bottom no matter what. This is just important. Keep this guy untouched at the bottom. Then this might be your Dynamesh with the holes closed, and then now I'm going to Z-Remesh this guy on the top. Z-Remesh this guy. Let's say 10 for 10,000 because he's got all the dreadlock stuff in the back. I click Z-Remesher. No, 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 no. No, 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 no. Is that? Oh wait, what's that? That's the theme song. It's for. Is it? Oh, it's Jeopardy. Oh yeah, that's the Jeopardy theme song. Anyway, yeah, we're waiting for the yellow bar here at the top to go all the way across, and when we see that, we're squeezing down whatever poly count this currently is to 10 for 10,000, or at least it's trying to. Hopefully I didn't interrupt it because I don't see the bar going. Oh, there it goes. Boom. There's my new topology. Anybody have questions with this? Questions, comments, concern? Hey, an anime girl ponytail. Hey, those were dreadlocks once upon a time, I'll have you know. I will put the dreadlocks back, but I have to take the dreadlocks off first to put the dreadlocks back. So this is for everybody, guys. You gotta have a bald head first to add hair later as a hair piece or as fiber mesh. But you gotta start with a bald head. I hate to break it to you. So you gotta get to that bald head somehow. So you gotta get the hair off first to put the hair back on. I know it sounds nuts, but that's what I'm gonna do here. So how do I do it? Gotta get rid of all this stuff, right? So then, here we go. If I want to recapture the detail, remember from the previous lesson, from the previous video, Command D to divide up, make sure only the two are visible, and then project. This is at the bottom of the subtool palette again. So at the bottom of the subtool palette, we have a project button. You should only really do this with two subtools active. It'll project anything that's visible. That's really important. So only project from what's underneath it. I click project and I can get the detail back. So it's like Command D, project. And you should see that it begins to match. So Command D, project. So I'm getting the detail back from actually the Dynamesh in this case. taking a second for this projection. I may have gone a little too high. Yeah, let's check the poly count. Yeah, we're at 1 million. For right now, I think I'm good with that. So I'll turn off the one underneath it. That's the Dynamesh one. This is now the Z-remeshed one. So why? Why did I do that? What was the big deal? Because now, instead of using Sculptress Pro to smooth out stuff, the old school way of doing it is to use multiple subdivisions. So Shift D again will go down, and D will go up. And this is really valuable because if I want to get rid of larger forms as opposed to finer detail, I can go down to a lower subdivision level by hitting Shift D. Shift D takes me down here. Turn off Sculptress Pro mode because this does not work with subdivision levels. So please do not turn this on by accident because that will break your subdivisions. But now, at a lower subdivision level, like down here, I can like smooth all this stuff out, and you can already see it moves faster. I hit D to go back up, and then continue smoothing, right? So the point I'm getting at is if you really want to make major changes very quickly to your forms and really get rid of this stuff fast, then you can do it at a lower subdivision level. And it happens much faster at these lower subdivision levels. You know, it's like, oh, that's just gonna really quickly erase or smooth right out. And then I can hit D to go back to the next one and then continue working until I'm starting to get the shape of the top of his head. And you're like saying, well, yeah, that's nice and everything, but what about the back of his head where you have all that volume? And yeah, oh my God, you're right. It is definitely problematic. I'm not gonna lie. So if you need to get rid of that much, he's looking kind of like the Elephant Man. It's not a tumor. It's not a tumor. No, he's not looking like the Elephant Man, but elephantitis is a thing, and that would be very unfortunate. We want to get the back of his head back. How do we do it? We got to trim this off somehow. So our options either hitting Shift D to go down to a lower subdivision level, make a larger brush, resist the urge to use Sculptress Pro, and hold down Smooth, hold down Shift, smooth this guy back. You don't have to make a perfect skull shape this way. It would take a while. Go down to your lowest subdivision level, hold down Shift to smooth back. If you need to hold down Alt, by the way, oh, here's a good tip. If you need to hold down Alt, of course, with the Move brush, that'll push in. But here's a really good one. If you go to Inflate, that's B-I-N for inflate. You know, logically, that's going to inflate out the head. That's not what we want. We want the opposite, right? So holding down Alt will deflate, right? And don't worry if, oh God, that's nasty. Hold down Shift, smooth that out. And just get the majority of the mass just back here, smooth it out wherever you need to. But like, you don't have to have the perfect shape of the head. Of course not. I just kind of want to just push all this stuff back, smooth out wherever you need to, you know. I feel like this is even more time consuming than it needs to be. Like maybe I should just trim this off somehow, perhaps. You know, looks like he's wearing a stocking cap or something. But this is again why having a skull cap or a bandana, when you scan the person, would have been, oh God, so much easier, right? I think everybody can agree with that. Instead of trying to do this, but I'm stuck with this problem. So what do? Other than like continuing to sculpt at lower subdivision levels using inflate, deflate. This is going to take a little while to fix the head this way. I'm holding again down Alt with my inflate brush, and that's going to deflate. But you can already see that I mean it's a frustrating process to go this way. But it does work in the sense that at lower subdivision levels, I can do a lot more sculpting and moving around and inflating, deflating, all that stuff. So I just wanted to give you, it's starting to look a little bit like a human head, a little bit. Get all that hair out. Jeez, all the hair. Oh, jeez. So yeah, I could spend a while doing this, but there's another way, there's a better way. What I'm going to do, because I don't really have the shape of his head as reference, now the D button right? Takes me back up. And you can see where the messy areas are, like around the ear, like holy crap, and all this is still a big mess. But at least, like, a lot of the volume is gone, at the very least, from the back of his head. And I just wanted to share, again, that the old way of doing it, which is still really valid, is to make new subdivisions using Z-remesher. Hit Shift D, and then that way you can either use inflate, deflate, smooth, for example, smooth, come on, or even the move brush. And note that this is going to move around a lot faster and easier. And Alt, of course, pushes. Right? So Alt is going to push or pull along the normal. So whenever you want to push or pull, move brush plus Alt. Shift for smooth. Okay, so I'm kind of just trying to guess at what the back of his head looks like, but this hopefully is really driving home the point as to why I kept telling you guys you need something that fits the skull. It's important. So what can we do instead is actually we can take an existing base mesh, which is built into Zbrush, and then we can take that existing base mesh and basically use the existing base mesh to try to get Alt again, push and pull. Use an existing base mesh to get a better sense of what the back of his head should look like. Because without him wearing a bandana or without him wearing a skull cap, I'm kind of really guessing at what the back of his head looks like. I don't think I'm doing a terrible job here. Obviously this ear, I don't want to talk about that ear right now. But I'm again guessing at the masses and forms for the back of his head. You don't have to do this. You can import a male human head and line it up and then use one of the base meshes built into ZBrush. So do we have a bald base mesh that I can look at in ZBrush? Click the comma button to bring up your light box. There's a female head, but it's bald at least. Here under Tool, I have some other built-in base meshes. So switch to another tool. Notice I switched to the star. And don't switch to the demo head because that has hair. It doesn't really help you very much because the volume of the hair is already there. But you could switch to something else like the demo soldier. I think he's bald. And then, yep, he's definitely bald. And then I could just sort of steal his head because I want to steal the back of the head. Oh man, that's a crazy like neck muscle there. But anyway, if this is what we want to use for the back of the head, we can grab it if we want. Watch this. Select this subtool, click Make Polymesh 3D. Now I've separated it out. That was easy, fast, right? Then if I want to separate this guy out, I can hit Command-Shift-Tap. That polygroup is isolated, right? Then we can say Split Hidden. Down here, Split Hidden. Now my head is again separate. Steal this head really quick. Not to say they look anything alike, but again, shape of the head, right? That's what I'm after. So now, same thing. Click Make Polymesh 3D, and now it's a separate tool. I can click this large icon to get back to what I was working on. Where'd you go? There we go. Scan data. And now I can import or append or insert that head. And we just want the head. PM3D demo soldier head. So, where the heck is it? Oh my god, it's all the way over there. This becomes the big problem with this technique. But again, if you didn't have a skull cap or bandana, didn't follow instructions, then this becomes a big problem, doesn't it? So, W to move, hit the map marker or go to Unmasked Mesh Center, and then move, scale, and rotate. You're probably thinking, man, there's no align function? You gotta be kidding me. And yeah, I know, it's kind of a pain, and yeah, there's not really an align function. Sorry, I mean, yeah, there's under deformation you have unify. I think I talked about this the other day. Under deformation, this unify button will actually match them somewhat. But I've had such bad luck with that method, I just gave up on it because inevitably I just want it to move one head and it wants to move both of them. It's just a pain. So I just end up doing it by hand because as long as I get relatively close, well, obviously the scale should be close. And yeah, I'm eyeballing this. And yeah, sometimes that's just what you got to do. Now, what might help you here when you're eyeballing this is to turn on transparency. And you're probably like, why on earth are you going through this much trouble? And you don't have to. For those of you guys that have good scan data, seriously, you have the back of your head. Like, it's already there. It looks good. You don't have to go through all this stupidness, right? I'm doing this because I'm kind of comparing the two heads a little bit and comparing the volumes of the heads. And so I'm trying to basically get them close so I can look at what the difference is. You know? You can turn perspective off, but the scan data is not going to have a perfect like alignment kind of thing. Or when you hold down shift, it's not going to be front and back and top and bottom because scan data has its own space, you know? Anyway, move this in, try to get it close. See, already I can see, whoa, scale is a little crazy. So I'll scale this guy down. Transparency. There's a transparency button right here. Helps a lot. And with the transparency button, then I can really kind of move one head into the other and really just try to line them up as much as I can. And if you need to if you need to scale, move, rotate, like look at the ears. What are the ears doing? Try to line up the ears, try to line up the eyes. And if you're saying, I have great scan data, why is this, yeah, okay, fine, then you probably don't have to do what I'm doing right now. But if you have a hat, or if you have a character with hair, or if you have scan data with hair you got to get rid of, then this is actually pretty useful, I would say. That's pretty close. It's interesting how much wider the head is there, but that's pretty close. Turn on perspective again. And so now, let's take a look at Josh's head up here. Turn on transparency, hit Q to sculpt. And it's a little unfortunate, but look, you can use your arrow keys to go up and down. And I know it's not a perfect match or anything, but that's not really the point. Actually, let's go back to this guy. At least move the front of the nose out. That I feel like is pretty important. So at least the front of the nose. Like, match the profile and eyes as much as possible. And when I do this, I can see the volume on Josh's head, I'm pretty sure is way too big. Like, see how much, I've got too much volume on Josh's head. Definitely, this is exactly where the problem is. See how I've identified that by basically trying to lay them on top of each other as much as I can. And then once I lay them on top of each other, I turn on transparency, and I can see the difference in skull size and skull shape and head size. And so if you followed instructions, and you have like a bandana or skull cap, this is probably not even an issue for you. So you're probably wondering, or this is a waste of my time. But let's just pretend that you have a similar problem, right? Shift D, go down to the lowest subdivision. Turn off wireframe because that's just distracting. And note that your move topo brush will push or pull right along the, see? So use your move topo brush basically to start pushing and pulling the other skull gently. And so again, the way I'm doing this, making a pretty large brush, move brush, holding down Alt, which basically just lets me push. You could probably use deflate if you prefer. And smoothing is also not a bad idea in this case. You might also gently pull it back out if you need to. But basically I'm just trying to match some smoothing. I'm just trying to match the head shape. And don't be afraid to smooth back. You're going to probably end up covering this anyway with a hair piece, some hair sculpting. So don't worry if it's not perfect. As long as it has roughly the head shape, then that's all that really matters. So it's okay to use a base mesh, like an existing base mesh in ZBrush. Like, it's totally cool to do that, just to get something like the back of the head looking closer. I don't know why I'm saying like there's a classroom here in front of me or something. I don't know. It's a force of habit maybe. But in this way, with the lower poly, lower poly count thanks to Z remesher. Let's take a look now. I'll hide the one on the bottom, turn off transparency, hit the D button to go back up. What do you guys think? Is the head looking better? Does that look more like, looks like down here in the bottom I got some issues. Let's turn this guy back on. Ooh, well, he's just got a super thick neck, I think. Holy crap. Maybe that's why. Move topo, push this in, push this in, push this in. Turn off the reference. Smooth. Still feel like got some weird stuff going on back here. Oh no, strange. But yeah. Okay. Questions? Who's got questions? Note again that at lower subdivision levels, I know I keep saying this, but it's easier to smooth and it's also easier to move masses around at lower subdivision levels. So that's why Z remeshing is super useful. Okay, and then D will take me back up. Boy, I have a lot of repair on that ear. Oh boy, that's going to be fun. What do you guys think? How are you feeling about this? Is it making sense? Check my Twitch. Decapitate him, let the blood spill. Yeah, I mean, I could use the clipping brush. You guys want me to do that? You really want me to go there? You want me to get mad with the clipping brush? A little bit of a decapitation. Command Shift, select the clip curve, and then just decide. Bow, bam. Clipped. It's gone. No more head. Easy. Fixed. So simple. All right. Okay. Actually, it is useful for the shoulders and stuff here. I was joking a minute ago, but I'm not really joking now. You could actually use the clipping brush to clean up the stuff down here. Clip curve, Command Shift, switch to the clip curve, right? And then try to tilt your head so that he's facing you forward. Excuse me. Then hold down Command and Shift, activate clip curve. Excuse me, sorry. Spacebar will move it. Try to make it vertical. And then clip. Cleans that up nicely. Do it to the other side, Command and Shift. Note that once you activate it by holding down Command and Shift, you can just, again, move it around. And it's always going to clip against the gradient no matter what. No matter where you are, right? Like that. So depending on where you start this, Command Shift, the gradient could be in a different place. So just be aware if you start from the top to the bottom, you can see the gradients in the wrong place. You can just go flip up, spacebar down. Give them equal distance on the shoulders. Cool. Now, got something that looks pretty nice. We can do one more clip down here, Command Shift to activate again. Here's the cool part. Tap the Alt button, tap the Alt button, tap the Alt button to make curvature. Spacebar to move it around, release. Yeah. Oh God, that's a big mess back there. And we have the problem of flash, which is something that the clipping brush creates. Yeah, so I'll undo that last one. Talk a little bit about flash. Flash, or, well, some people call it flash. Some people call it like clipping overhang or clipping lip or something like that. So that is an issue. Let's see if I can force it to happen again. If I were to clip something crazy like that, it's like, whoa, I got rid of the whole head, right? It's gone. That's amazing, right? Right? Oh my God, that's not, no, that's just, you just smushed it. You just smushed it down to the gradient. So it has its limitations, I guess you could say. You can't just clean this up perfectly and not expect some of that flash or overhang. So what do we do about it? It does work better with Dynamesh than it does with these subdivisions. So nice thing about the subdivisions, it's great for cleaning up stuff like this. Back here, this is freaking awful. So if I go down to my lower subdivisions, I hit Shift D and make a small brush, or small-ish, medium-sized brush, and hold down Shift. And you can see how it like really nicely smooths away and erases and sort of fixes a lot of problems. It doesn't fix everything, clearly. Shift D, got like some crazy stuff happening down here. But we can actually, whoa, that's terrifying. Oof, man, I don't even know what happened there. Man, terrifying. All right, so what do we do? Because man, the back of this is just crazy bad. This is not good topology. This is bad for so many reasons. We've got holes, it's spiking out, it won't smooth back, which, ugh, super annoying. So what do we do? Since this has subdivision levels intact, let's hit the D button. The D button will take us back. I'm in about 1 million right now, roughly. Yeah. So if I can still keep this this detail or most of it, again by Dynameshing, then that would be a good way to get to a point where this is more solvable. Right now, it's not super solvable. I mean, I go down to a lower subdivision level. You know, I try to smooth this out at every different subdivision level. Like Shift D, I go down to the lowest one. It just doesn't want to smooth out. So that's definitely not working for me. I got to find another solution. So that method is definitely bad, busted, doesn't work. So then, let's Dynamesh it again. I know we can get rid of this guy most likely if we got the back of the head. I'm fairly happy with the back of the head right now. So we still have this first guy that we Dynamesh, but I'm going to ignore that for a second. And I know that I have subdivision levels. I hit Shift D, I can go down. I hit D, I can go back up. But I want to delete these subdivision levels in order to Dynamesh. Click Delete. Now it's relatively dense, as you can see. That's okay. I'm going to Dynamesh this again because I want to just cut. Or actually, you know what? Before I Dynamesh, even better. Before I Dynamesh, this is what I'm going to just get rid of this problem area. It's driving me nuts right now. This is how I'm going to do it. Hold down Command and Shift. Before I mentioned the clip, this actually will fix the problem, kind of. I mean, we have holes. But it's just smushing it, isn't it? So if I clip this, it's basically just pushing that geometry. And you can kind of see in the wireframe, I still have all the problem area. I have that hole. So what the heck do I do about this? Instead of clipping, which usually solves a lot of problems, we're going to hold down Command and Shift, and we're going to instead go to Trim. There's even a trim, or excuse me, there's even a option. Instead of Trim Curve, there's Trim Lasso. It's a little more dangerous, but I feel like living dangerously. I lasso around, and what does it do? Whoa, it just removes it. It's gone. cool thing is it replaced it with a new polygroup and this crazy like topology that looks like the inside of a brain. But that's super cool, right? That just fixed all my problems. And that's, again, Command and Shift. You can either use Trim Lasso or Trim Curve. I always get more control out of the Trim Curve. So if we use Trim Curve, pay attention to where your gradient is. Spacebar will let me move it. If I use Trim Curve, then I have the option of tapping the Alt button. And again, spacebar moves it. I release. Oh my God, I think I cut the head off. Oops. Well, you're getting the general gist of it, I think. Let's do that again. Let's try not to cut the head off. Tap the Alt button to get curvature there. Spacebar. Don't cut off the back of the head. That would be bad. I just spent all this time restoring the back of the head. Oh, I still snipped it. If I mask, hold down Control, mask out what you want to protect, it's easy enough to fix that problem. Just mask the back of the head, Command and Shift, reactivate, clipping, oh, not clipping, this is trimming, right? Reactivate trimming, and now it doesn't matter. Now the back of the head is protected by a mask, so I'm good. See? All right. I feel like I should have trimmed it this way, but I still can. You know, if you want. Alt to bend the curve. You can see why you get a little bit more control out of the curve brushes, I think, than the lasso. But some people get really fast with the lasso, so they prefer it. I've definitely seen a lot of artists that are like, lasso for life. And that's fine. I'm just that guy that likes the curve because I can move it with the space bar and I can tap Alt. And now I'm actually trimming the topology. That means I'm removing it. It leaves a hole behind and then fills the hole with a new poly group, which if you look closely is a different color and some funky topology. I don't care. So now I've used either the clip brush or the trim brush to kind of fix up the shoulders a little bit. You can get pretty like specific with this, especially with the curve brush. Again, spacebar moves it. And Alt gives me that nice curvature, and then release. Are you bored yet? Are you bored yet? Are you bored yet? No. I just want to go over clipping and trimming with you guys. And you know, you can use this as much or a little as you want because the shoulders are not as important really as the rest of the features. I just felt like taking this opportunity to review or talk about these clipping brushes and trim brushes, which could be very useful. Very useful for hard surface modeling, planar stuff. There we go. Oh no, don't know what happened there. I must have clipped it a little much. I'm going to leave the shoulders alone at this point, but I think you get the idea. Who's got questions for me before I continue to move on with the cleanup? Does anybody have questions? Oh my God, crit, what time is it? Oh, somebody should have maybe stopped me. You can add shoulders to your scan, and holy crap, we have very little time for crit. You guys are supposed to speak up because I can't just check all the time. Man, I didn't even get to do very much with, you know, like the rest, but I guess I got to stop here and pick the scan cleanup up a little later. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. So save the STL file, call it scan cleanup 1. For God's sakes, don't lose that first subtool because that's your raw scan data. Just always keep that. But we're going to have to get to this again next class because I got to talk about your work a little bit.